Hi BookTube! I'm here today to do my weekly wrap-up of all the books I read from last Sunday to this Saturday. I read 6 books and 3 of them were audiobooks, so I had a lot of listening time this week. And like I mentioned on my Friday reads, I'm in the middle of many big, chunky books, and so yeah, it's going to take me a while to get through those. So that's why I was able to get through some audiobooks listening at work. And actually the weather here wasn't too hot on some of the days, and so I took advantage of that as much as possible and went on lots of walks with my dog, and so I got a lot of listening time through that as well. And so the first one I listened to was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I wasn't initially very interested in this book, but I decided to give it a shot because I have seen on BookTube many people talking about it, and I knew the audiobook has like several different narrators for each of the characters has his own distinct voice in it. And I know it's like based on a band, and so I thought maybe it'd be music or whatnot, so it'd be interesting to give it a go. I have read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I really liked. I really enjoyed that one. But this one didn't interest me too much. It's about, like I said, Daisy Jones and the Six, about their band and all of like the tangled web they weave of like their different like drama experiences with dating and sleeping around with different people of the band. And it mainly does focus on Daisy Jones and her life experience. She had a really tumultuous childhood, and so she kind of goes wild, and it has like a good like 70s vibe to this audiobook. And I liked it okay. Like I mentioned before, I read Seven Deaths, so that's another book. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I really like that one, but I know this author, Taylor Jenkins Reid, has written many books, and not all of them have caught my eye, but I thought I'd give this a shot since I've seen so many people talk about it. And yeah, it was an okay story. It wasn't my favorite, but there's a couple others of her books that I might be interested in, and I'll think about giving it a shot in the future. The next book is one I read for the Romance Book Bingo. This is The Beach House by Mary Alice Monroe. There's a really pretty beachy cover, and there's the beach house. And this is the first book in the Beach House series, and it's focusing on a Corette Rutledge, and I like it. It also mixes in some biology information on sea turtles, and Corette is the scientific name. Corette is the name for the loggerhead sea turtles, and so the mother is just so fascinated by them that she names her daughter after the scientific name for these creatures. And so they play a part in the story because the mother is dealing with a lot of health problems. So she calls in her daughter, who is kind of been estranged. She's living in Chicago, and this story takes place in South Carolina. And she wants her to come home to kind of like reconnect with her and help her with the sea turtles. And it's really cool. Like, this book can have some dark elements to it because the mother is dealing with significant health issues, and so that's really depressing and sad because like the family is coming together, but it's for a really bad situation, and so the turtles are like that moment of light in throughout the book. And so what I really liked with this book is, even though it's like chick lit or women's fiction, it still took elements of reality because there's a hurricane that comes through, and they have to batten down the hatches with that. But it talks about how like global warming is affecting the sea turtles, how they don't always have the right place to nest on the beach because a lot of it is tourist areas, or there's hotels built there and whatnot, and there's like trash and debris. And so I liked how it didn't just cover that up or not even mention it at all, because that is a part of living on the beach on the East Coast, is dealing with hurricanes, and how you might have this really nice big house, but it could be destroyed at any minute during hurricane season. So I really like this book. I will for sure be picking up more from this author. And the next one is an audiobook also for the Romance Book Bingo. And this is from an author I've read a couple of books by, and I can zoom in on the cover. It's not letting me, because every time I zoom in it's going back. But anyway, here's this cover, The Cliff House, and it's a really, like I said, a pretty beachy cover. And this is, I think, part of a series as well. Okay, it's not mentioning on this one. It might be a standalone then. It's a contemporary romance, and this was narrated by, it's not listing here, Georgina Marie. And yeah, the narration was pretty good. and this is all about Cape Sanctuary. It's set in Northern California this time instead of like the southern region from the other book, and it's all about like sisters and aunts all coming together. They've all been raised in different ways. They've all like have different backgrounds, and so it's kind of like as they're an adult, kind of like finding that stability in life, even though, you know, their different childhoods weren't the same, and it's always like kind of like a look at the draw, what kind of parents you'll get, and it's all about them, you know, finding sanctuary in this cliff house. They all like, you know, reconnect there, and it's a place where they, you know, seek solace and try to find happiness, and it was a really cute romance story. Let's see, the next one is going from fiction to nonfiction, and this is Horizon by Barry Lopez. Here's the cover, a very blue cover. And this, each chapter in this book features a different setting for where he's traveled. And it's a global, it's Antarctica, South America, Alaska, Greenland, all over. And so you get, you know, moments of really freezing cold in Antarctica, and then you get like the warm jungle. And so he's a really well-traveled, well-written man. And he's won at the National Book Awards. And this is the first book I've read by him. But there's a couple others that I want to read. And so this, I guess, it's kind of a departure from his normal nature writing, because he's pulling elements from his own life. It's very like autobiographical in a way. Because he talks about, you know, what took him to these places, what he learned there, not just talking about making comments on what he's seeing with the animals, but he's also talking about his own life at the time, which was very interesting, and like the friends he made with the different scientists, and like the enemies he made as well. So yeah, I for sure will be looking up more from him. Let's see, the next one is one I have a physical copy for. I don't have my cover. I put the cover. I don't keep the paper covers on the books, so I don't want them to be destroyed, but I'll show you the cover here, and then I'll show you some pictures. It's kind of blurry, but it's The Dinosaur Heresies. This is what the cover I have looks like. Dinosaur Heresies by Robert T. Baker, and this is one I was so happy to find at my local used bookstore, because I've been looking for this book for a good while, and I was so happy to find it, because I think it's out of print. It was written in 1986, and this is really his premise is based on his theory, because at the time when he was writing it, it was still like contested, you know, are dinosaurs coming from, you know, the cold-blooded like lizards and crocodiles, or were they warm-blooded? And so this whole book, he makes his argument for them being warm-blooded, and he talks about all these like studies he did in Harvard and Yale with like how they walk, how the crocodiles walk. You know, he was taking like photography and videos of how they're walking, and then they look at the fossils for how like their bone structure is structured compared to like, you know, kind of like the more spaced out gait of like a crocodile. And that's just one example of one of his arguments for them being warm-blooded. Now I'll show you some pictures. All throughout this book there's illustrations, because he's also an artist. I don't know if you can see this. I can't see in the camera if what it's picking up. So I can show you another one. It's like almost every other page has some artwork in it, which helps, you know, you get an idea for what he's talking about. Because sometimes when you look at fossils, you can't, like pictures of fossils, you don't always know. It's hard to imagine, you know, what the creature is like just based on the bones. Here's another one. And he also has like a little commentary on each picture of what he's illustrating. So yeah, this was it was very well written. It lived up to all my expectations. Of course, like nowadays we know that, you know, they were warm-blooded. So that argument, it got a little bit not tiring, but it really, you know, brings home the point that they were warm-blooded. At the time of this book was written, it was very eye-opening for a lot of people. And I'm so happy I read it, and I'm happy I've read you know, more modern day works of books on dinosaurs. Like I read The Fall and Rise of I think the name was The Fall and Rise of Dinosaurs. I read that last year, and that's a new book that came out recently on dinosaurs. So I'm happy to have like that balance, because I knew ahead of time, you know, that his argument was correct. And it's kind of weird, like, because when you think of, you know, like technology and science, like all the advancements we've made, you know, what our theories were beforehand, and how even this, like, you know, wild theory of them being warm-blooded, you know, it's popped up over time throughout history, and it's always been like rebuffed, like, oh no, it's not true. And so it's just weird looking back, you know, like the different errors we made, and now we're like, yeah, we know for sure. So yeah, it was interesting. And let's see, and this last one was another audiobook, and this was narrated by Kevin R. Free, and this is Let's Go Swimming. So Let's Go Swimming on Doomsday. So let me zoom in a bit. Here's that cover. Let's Go Swimming on Doomsday, and it's by Natalie C. Anderson. And this was, like I said, it was narrated, I forgot who I mentioned. The narration was pretty good. It's narrated by Kevin R. Free, and I haven't heard a book by him before, but this book, it was really hard for me to read because this is considered a young adult realistic fiction. This is what it was called, and it's not your typical romance YA book where, you know, you have like this like teenage romance. This didn't have romance at all. Like the little clip it has at the top says, forced to become a child soldier, a 16-year-old Somali refugee must confront his painful past in this haunting, thrilling tale of loss and redemption. And so this is about Abdi, and like I said, it talks about how he became a soldier not through his own means, not through his own choice. He was kind of like brought into it, and it's also flashing back and forth between that time as a soldier and then now when he's going through high school, and it kind of like go back to normal in a way in his interactions with the students there at the school, and how, you know, some of them were struggling in with their families, and he couldn't really talk. You know, he had a really hard time relating to them because he far did not have a normal childhood, and so it's all about, you know, him trying to come to terms with everything, and yeah, like work his brain around what happened. And it's one chapter is that, and then you'll go back to him being a soldier. So it's not a very happy book. There's a lot of violence, and it's very like military. Yeah, there's killings, and yes, it was a very interesting. It stand out in my mind as a young adult book that features a lot of war in Somalia. I learned a lot about, you know, like what's happening in Somalia, and I'm sure it's based on real life. So yeah, it's a little bit of a harrowing young adult, but if it piques your interest, then, you know, you might want to give it a shot. So yeah, these are all the books I read this week. I'm hoping to have a really good week this week coming up. I've been reading like a fiend over this weekend because I'm participating in the Create Your Own readathon, where I was going to plan to read 10 hours, and I've far exceeded that. And so yeah, but right now I'm reading like the 9/11 book that I mentioned, The Fall and Rise of 9/11, and it's so hard to read, and it's due back in my library in the next, I think, 3 days, and so yeah, I don't know. I might have to renew it and like come back to it when it gets back to me, but I think it has like 10 holds on it, so it could be like months and months for me to get back. So I'm like, should I keep going with it or not? But it's kind of like affecting my mood, so I'm happy to have got on here and talk to you guys to kind of like uplift my mood, because it's so depressing. I can see why I was like holding off on reading a book about 9/11. But yes, I'll see you soon. Thanks, BookTube.